Rejoice, everyone. We're back with another Sekhie Reacts to Fate, or the Ramayana Reacts to Fate. There we go. This week we are doing Rama and Sita. Now, contrary to what we normally do, I'm actually going to have Sekhie start us off a little here. Don't give us the full story, but give us the quick rundown of your very, very, very abridged version of the Ramayana.
Okay, so the quick version of the Ramayana, right, is that the Ramayana is the story of Rama. Rama is a reincarnation of Vishnu, and he marries Sita, and they're sent into exile because of one of his stepmothers, bitch. And then Sita is kidnapped by Ravana, who is an evil deity, and then he has to go get Sita. And then when they get back, he's crowned rightfully king, but somebody cast doubt on Sita, so Sita has to go through the trial of fire, and she does successfully. They come back, they're married, yada yada yada. Basically, it's an epic quest to get his wife back, with the help of, like, his brother, Lakshmana, and, you know, Hanuman, the monkey god, and a bunch of other characters. But Ravana's the main villain, Rama and Sita are the two main characters, Lakshmana's probably the next most important character, and then Hanuman. And it's one of two ancient Indian epics, the other one being the Mahabharata, which are very influential in culture. Obviously, they are regarded as two great classics of culture and literature. And honestly, really good reads. You should go read them.
All right, thank you for that, Sekhie. All right, so let me go ahead and... How do I want to go about this? Do I want to show you both Rama and Sita at the same time, or do I want to show you...
Why don't you start with Rama?
Uh-oh. Okay, no, I'm good. I didn't click caps lock.
Because, fun fact, for Rama and Sita, we actually have mythological depictions of them. Like pictures and such.
Well, I wish I knew that when it going in. So this is Rama.
Okay, you had... Okay. Hey, that looks really cool, actually.
And here's his April Fool's art.
That's adorable.
Here's the background stuff. And
Yeah.
with the background. And here's the more complex piece.
Okay, that's really cool. I think that looks really good. So, for reference, I'm going to show Knick-Knack the actual art of Rama, and then I'll put it on screen for all of you. But this is what he's depicted as traditionally. Yeah.
Yep, that checks out.
Yeah, so traditionally he's blue, and I mean, obviously it's very traditional ancient Indian art. So I'm sure if you know about the art of the Indian subcontinent, you probably know what I'm talking about. He fights primarily with a bow, so I hope he's an archer.
We're going to get to that.
Okay, because that is his weapon, is the bow and arrow. And he is very famous for that, because one of the parts of his mythology that's very important is that he wins Sita's hand in marriage by stringing a particular bow.
I'm glad you brought that up. Put a pin in that because he's a saber. Put a pin in the bow comment, though. We will get back to that, and there's a reason. As Sekhie sips tea. Or water. No, that's not as good as water or tea. It's Diet Dr. Pepper.
I was going to say, you have far too much faith in me if you think I'm drinking anything healthy.
Alright, so just before I really get going here, why don't I follow up with Sita? Because they're pretty tied together.
Okay, I also wanted to make one more comment, right? Well, we call him Rama, but his full name is actually Ramachandra, or Ramakandra, because there are several Ramas in Hindu mythology, so each one has a different last name or second name. So, to be specific, we're talking about Ramachandra.
And this is Sita.
So she looks like a female version of... Is that intentional?
Yes.
Okay. She's an archer. That's interesting.
Yep.
I'm actually surprised by that, because one of the fun things about the Ramayana, right, is that Sita is, interestingly enough, a very eloquent speaker in the Ramayana. Like, Rama does all the fighting, and obviously he's the main character, but when Sita shows up in the story, she's usually very well-spoken and gives speeches about particular things, either philosophical or political or that kind of thing. So she's kind of like the balance to Rama in a lot of ways in the story.
That makes sense.
Because she's supposed to be, as well, she's also... She's regarded as a form of Vishnu's wife, Lakshmi. And Vishnu and Lakshmi are two of the main gods of Hinduism. And the thing is, Vishnu reincarnates 8 times, that kind of thing. Each of his lives is different avatars, because according to Hindu mythology, the entire world is a dream happening in the palm of one of the god's hands as he naps on a lotus in heaven, and every world lasts 4 billion years before his dream ends. The world ends and he starts a new dream with a new world. He also floats over a sea of clarified ghee or butter or something like that. I'm not sure.
That's interesting.
Depending on the telling. I've always found the way Hindu mythology sets up the world to be fascinating, that we all exist as a dream happening in the mind of this essentially primordial god being.
So hearing that does sound familiar. I'll say I don't want to talk about it too much because it's kind of more or less past the subject of this, but Fate does play around with that idea of that cycle, like that dream cycle kind of thing at some point. Sometimes. It's not all the time, but like it does play around with it a little bit in some of the Indian contexts.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get back to this. Let me go ahead and what I've got on Rama and Sita in my notes here. Okay. So this definitely plays up the part where Sita is kidnapped.
Okay.
So Rama and Sita are pretty intrinsically tied together servants, as you could tell by their designs.
Oh yeah, they honestly, if I didn't know that they were Rama and Sita,
you would think it's Rama and gender bent Rama, or
yeah,
Sita and gender bent Sita.
Pretty much, yeah.
And yeah, I'll get to that in a second. They do exist as separate entities with their own abilities, though.
Okay.
So they are not technically Rama and female Rama.
Does Ravana show up at all in the Fate story?
I don't know specifically where it's categorized, but it's mentioned in the backstory. Ravana is not like a summonable servant or anyone we've seen in FGO yet.
I wouldn't think so. I'm just wondering if they mention.
So, as you brought up in your story, Rama did earn, in Fate, Rama did in fact earn Sita's hand with the bow.
By stringing it, yes.
Yes. Well, he picked it up, strung it, and broke the string, too.
Yeah. No, that is what happens.
Rama is a reincarnation of Vishnu, and Sita is a reincarnation of Lakshmi.
Lakshmi.
Yep.
It's not Lakshmi. It's not like sashimi. It's Lakshmi. Also, Rama in himself, I don't know if they have it in Fate, but he is a king.
Yes.
Like, he was born to a pair of rulers in Ayodhya, and has 3 siblings. Of which I have actually heard the names of before outside of Lakshmana, because it's Bharata and Shatrughna. And you know what the interesting part about the story is? Sita invites him and his brothers to come meet her sisters, and a bunch of them end up married. Like the brothers and sisters.
Neat.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
So, yeah, just as it probably sounded like, or as it sounds like from what you're describing, the demon king Ravana kidnapped Sita. Rama goes to save her with his army of monkeys.
Mm-hmm. As provided to him by Hanuman, the monkey god.
Yep. However, at one point, Rama made the mistake of intervening in a conflict between 2 Sea Dog VAs. Monkeys.
Okay.
And because he intervened, one of the ones that were involved, named Volley, placed a curse on, or Volley was what is it? Ugh. Sorry, I'm not wording today. Because he intervened pretty cowardly in a sneak attack against one named Volley, Volley's wife placed a curse on Rama to get back at him.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, when Rama should have reunited with Sita, the two basically spent their entire lives narrowly missing each other.
So that definitely doesn't follow the plot of the original story, I will say. However, one of the interesting things about the original story is in some depictions, it does actually have a tragic ending, but not because he doesn't save her, but because, like I said, there's a point in the story where doubt is cast upon. Somebody says that Sita went along with Ravana willingly, right? Mm-hmm. And that she's been impure and all that kind of stuff, and she has to go through an agony. Like she has to go through a trial of fire.
Yep.
To prove that she's been faithful. And in some variations of the story, the two of them can never shake the fact that they don't trust one another, and so they end up kind of dying alone. Not alone, but they die separately, not trusting one another even to the end in some versions of the story, which is really tragic, and in other versions it doesn't matter. And they have twin sons, of course.
Yeah, Fate says that Rama and Sita were cursed to never be allowed to see each other again.
Yeah.
And that led to Sita having that doubt placed on her about having potentially been...
Yeah. And does Rama die by drowning himself like he does in the myth?
I actually don't know if I saw that part.
Okay.
Probably. If it was in the original myth, probably.
It's in a lot of the versions he dies by drowning himself.
Sita's trial by fire is definitely still a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And unfortunately, that curse carries over to when they become servants. So they...
Can they not be summoned in the same singularity then?
Not quite. It's actually unclear whether or not they're not seeing each other as a result of the curse or just sheer bad luck.
Because there are so many servants that you can summon.
But they do in FGO reunite for one moment, and just one moment.
What?
Although afterwards they were separated by another curse. This one, very different in nature, more lethal.
Okay.
So, I don't want to get into that because that gets into spoilers of that specific story. But
you didn't show me Sita's April Fools.
It's because she doesn't have one.
I thought is she new?
She's been around long enough to where she could have gotten one.
So they just didn't give her one.
There's a reason for that.
Okay.
I'll give it away now, I guess. Do you remember that Satanta didn't have an April Fool's?
Yeah.
Do you know why?
No.
Because he's an arcade exclusive.
Oh, so Sita's arcade exclusive?
And Rama is mobile exclusive.
Oh.
Seeing what happened here?
That sucks.
In two different versions of the story, they're both... One is summonable, but the other is not.
Yeah, okay. That sucks. That fucking sucks.
Alright, now time to answer probably your biggest question since we started
Why is he a fucking saber?
You might like this.
Okay.
So, Rama actually knows he would be a better archer, and normally he would be summoned as an archer.
Okay.
In FGO, he forcibly, by sheer willpower, forced himself to become a saber because Sita, due to the bow being what gave her hand in marriage, really can only be summoned as an archer.
Okay.
So, if he makes himself a saber in a Holy Grail War, he has a higher chance of being able to run into Sita than if he stayed an archer.
Oh, that's the cutest thing ever! That's so sweet. That's star-crossed. See, this is the kind of thing why I understand why Rama and Sita are associated with the festival of Diwali. Because that's whole fucking... God damn. That's adorable. That's fucking adorable.
But even as a saber, he's actually still very skilled with both a bow and a spear as well. He's just good at most weapons.
Yeah.
And there is another reason for that. One of his only unique skills is one that's... I don't know if there's any positive benefits to it.
Mm-hmm.
But he has one of his skills is the curse of separation.
Okay.
That prevents him from seeing Sita. So he's not seeing Sita no matter how hard he tries is the implication here.
Yeah. Aww. Poor thing.
Alright, we're going to jump back to Sita and we'll do their noble fan. I'm just jumping between the two because I feel like I have to here.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking just to see if there's anything that maybe you missed that I might have noticed, you know? Interesting. Ah, Ganesha! I wish Ganesha was a servant.
Ganesha's a servant.
Are they? They're not on our servant list.
I'll take a look. Ganesha's definitely a servant.
Okay.
Bit different in nature than Rama Sita, but definitely a servant.
Okay, because Ganesha's not on our list. I would know.
We'll take a look. I feel like I've told you that before, but we'll take a look later. If I might have missed it because Ganesha's a little different and it might have appeared differently on the list.
Okay.
So Sita. Sita is an archer servant. The reason why Sita looks like Rama is a play on the idea of Sita being Rama's other half, as the term would go.
Yeah.
So, I believe how it is explained in Fate is that Sita's appearance starts to reflect Rama a little bit more because of that. And it even mentions that Sita, in some ways, can be considered to be the archer Rama.
She has a cat with her. Aww, kitty.
All right. So, this one might be a little bit more interesting for you because due to it being arcade, we don't have as much material to go off of as far as the interpretation of the skills.
Wait,
we have
scroll up real quick. I just wanna... No, down. Stop. Okay, just looking.
So, because of that, we only have some flavor text, not really descriptions on what they can do.
Ah, hey! I recognize those too.
Yep.
So the story about Sita is that she was found in a field by her father when like tilling the earth, and the location of where that field is contested by different like sects of Hinduism, but a pilgrimage to that place and the place where she threw herself into a fire are both very, very common things to do in in like the Hindu practice and religion.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, the trial by fire for her with the infidelity.
Yeah, the Agni.
It does something. I have to imagine it's a fire resistance.
Oh, probably, yeah.
And then she has Rama's curse of separation, which isn't even her skill. It's just because it's applied to Rama, it's technically applied to her.
Yeah. No, I looked at her noble phantasm and I was like, I know that title. Because
Yes.
that's the bow. It's the bow of Lord Shiva.
Yep. That was Shiva's bow, and that's the bow that Rama picked up and proceeded to do so well that he broke it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was found by King Devaratha, the ancestor of King Janaka, who was Sita's father.
Yeah, normally Sita wouldn't actually be able to string it. She could pick it up, but she can't string it. But due to being considered Rama's other half as a servant, she's now able to string it, and that's how she functions as an archer.
That makes sense.
Moving over back to Rama for his noble phantasms, because I was going to do Rama's first, but since you brought up Sita's, we did that one, which is no problem. So Rama's first noble phantasm is do you want to pronounce that?
Brahmastra.
Which, that was actually, if you want to throw as an future editor Sekhie, if you want to throw the image of Rama back on screen, he's holding the bow and the arrow.
Yeah.
Brahmastra is actually the arrow, which Rama, when he became a saber, forcibly made into a sword.
Oh, interesting.
So now, it's a sword that makes a really damn good projectile.
Yeah. The second noble phantasm is a direct reference to the fact that he's one of Vishnu's reincarnations.
Yes.
I wonder if... Hang on. Let me check something.
He's got access to basically any weapon that was wielded by any of Vishnu's reincarnations.
I knew Vishnu, so I knew Vishnu from the second noble phantasm was a reference to the fact that he is one of the 8 reincarnations of Vishnu. But Bhuja as well is a reference to the mythology. I believe it's to a particular incarnation of Vishnu. He of the 1,000 arms. But I could be wrong. But I think that actually makes sense that it's Vishnu of 1,000 arms, because if it gives him access to all the weapons, that's where the 1,000 arms comes from, like all the arms and then the abilities to wield them. Also, chakrams are the coolest thing fucking ever. Like, hands down. Like, I love medieval weaponry. Like, I love things like Zweihanders and longsword and bastard swords, but chakrams are the coolest fucking weapon.
Yeah, right here you do have a bunch of the weapons named, so there might be some names.
Well, I saw chakrams.
This is where I was like, there might be something in the Mahabharata that this references, because I'm sure one of the names of the weapons in there appears.
Yeah, obviously. So they list them, right? But presumably, so the javelin with the name, that belongs to one of the other incarnations of Vishnu. So do the clubs that are named. The trident is possessed by Shiva. Shiva's bow was the named bow. So obviously these are all the names of actual weapons attributed to him, because obviously over 8 incarnations, as well as his actual god form, he's wielded a lot of weapons over time. Rama is one of the more popular incarnations of Vishnu as well. There are 8, but Rama's one of the most popular ones.
Yep. And yeah, actually, because he can wield so many weapons, he's actually even though he's a saber, because he can wield so many weapons and his divinity is high enough, he can effectively function as an archer or a lancer instead if he wants.
Yeah.
Which is helpful when he's a big bowman.
Yeah. Are Rama and Sita, or would they be coming anytime soon in the campaign?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Campaign 1.
Oh! See, we had so many things that were campaign 2 and 3 in the early episodes that I was like, I want Anastasia, campaign 3.
All right. Well,
but I will take Rama and Sita.
Why don't I show you
yeah.
the NPs?
Yeah. Yee. Yeet. So all 3 MPs we should watch.
There's only 2. One of them is just something Rama inherently has, kind of like Lancelot always has one.
His arrow sword, yeah. So, Rama's NP and Sita's NP.
We'll do Sita second, because Sita's arcade, so bigger.
Ooh, animation update?
He probably got one around the India chapter.
There.
This is the sword functioning as a projectile.
Chakram! I mean, it's not a full chakram, but, you know.
And that
nice.
is Rama's NP. All right.
Fucking nice!
Well, it's always in this. Let's just skip over to the gameplay function. Hey, your voice.
You know, I didn't really comment because we couldn't see a whole lot of Sita's art on the art you showed me. Like, I didn't see a whole lot of her body.
Mm-hmm.
She's not very covered.
No.
But I genuinely can't bring myself to care because I think it just looks like a really cool costume design. Especially with the armored shoulders and gloves.
There's Shiva's bow.
Pinaka!
Hey, that's a wonderful transition. She just shot our next servant.
Was that Altera?
That was Altera. You've seen Altera in the campaign once in a while.
No, I haven't opened her. Okay,
Ah.
no, this is another Julius Caesar. I didn't open her specifically. I haven't looked.
Oh, you knew it was a gender bend. But
Yeah,
we'll get into that later. That's for next time.
I knew Altera was Altera.
If I said that Altera's design was the weirdest part about Altera, I'd be lying.
Oh boy.
So,
Oh boy.
just as a few last things from me, I just have to say, fuck FGO Arcade.
I want arcade so bad.
So, like,
I want to play arcade. Knick-knack, I want to play arcade.
only if we move to Japan, apparently.
So knick-knack.
I'll start looking for teaching jobs in Japan. So what are your thoughts on Rama and Sita?
I like Rama and Sita. I don't know. So obviously these are the first 2 Indian servants I've seen,
Yes.
like ever. And I know that there's a bunch more. I've seen Karna. We're doing her later, or him. I'm not sure. Him later this year. And you said Ganesha. I knew Lakshmi Bai as a servant and a couple other characters, including the Buddha and some other people. And I was excited to do some Indian servants because I feel like when talking about like mythology and epics of ancient literature, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Rig Vedas are often overlooked because they're so long and involved.
I've heard the Mahabharata is infamously long.
It really is. I have a giant illustrated version with like annotations.
I'm sure I can convince you to pull that out when we do Karna.
Yeah, when we do Karna, I'll definitely pull it out because it's very pretty. Oh, it's a stunning copy. It's over there. It's huge, so it's on one of the shelves standing up. But it's nice to see that they stuck so close to the story because in Fate often you say things and I'm just like, that's not 1 + 1 = 7 in some weird places. So it's nice to see them stick pretty close. I'm not surprised that they didn't go with the whole blue skin thing. I wouldn't have expected them
how
to.
How are you supposed to sell a waifu with blue skin? Okay. You horny bastards, I know you could
Frost
sell a
Giant
waifu.
Loki.
I know you could absolutely sell a waifu with blue skin.
Frost Giant Loki, y'all. My waifu. I'm really excited to get them in game because I think they'd be really fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that they've gone to the effort with Rama's NPs of including like they didn't have to include like a list of weapons with names, right? And these are obviously like those are names from mythology. You can tell like they're not just made up names. They didn't have to go to that effort, but they did, and I really appreciate that.
I think Fate really likes to have fun with a lot of these older epic characters like Rama and Ku.
Yeah, I think if I had one complaint, right, about Rama and Sita, and this is somewhat related to the rest of the Indian servants, so this may not be a problem, right? But you know how all of the Celtic servants kind of follow the same dressing conventions as Ku and Sekhie? Mm-hmm. Is that true across the Indian servants?
No.
Okay, because then I would make the addendum that I think Fate could have gone a little harder on costuming. It would have been nice to see a little bit more of a... Coming from like one of the great epics of Indian culture, it would have been nice to see something a little bit more inspired by traditional Indian clothing. Like, you could have done some stunning Bollywood-esque designs for Sita especially. Just something a little less... I mean, and I don't... Scroll back up to Rama, but... because I think I looked at Rama, and my first thought looking at his costuming was, it kind of just looks like an altered piece of, like, Japanese clothing. It's got, like, the collars and stuff that looks more like a kimono or yukata or something than an Indian piece of clothing, is maybe my only complaint.
Speaking of Rama, I know it's not Rama. That's Rama and a bunch of servants, and... Oh, look, it's Fergus!
Wait, I love this. This is my favorite image. This is the best thing I've ever seen. I love this
Rama
so
in a kimono
much.
at first. And that's Rama in the background in a suit.
And cool.
I was just saying if they had something...
Yeah, so, yeah, like, you look at that, it's a little bit more Japanese-inspired than they... Like, I feel like they could have gone a little harder on the actual design element. Because... And you said, like I said, I didn't look to it for Ku because I know that Ku and Sekhie and a bunch of them have the same convention of that kind of jumpsuit and stuff. Mm-hmm. But if the Indian servants are all different, they could have gone just a little more on trying to make a more traditional outfit, maybe. I think that's my only complaint. Just, you know, you have such a wealth of fashion options. Like, imagine Sita in like a beautifully jewel-toned like sari or something. It would have been stunning. But that's a nitpick. That is the definition of a nitpick. Because I don't actually have an issue with the costumes. I think the costumes actually look really good. Like, the art is beautiful.
Alright, well, I think that about does it. We'll be back next time with Altera, aka Attila the Hun. That's going to be an episode. I begrudge Sekhie none of the reactions Sekhie's about to have, although Sekhie might have a few fun things to say.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I find curious, but we'll get there when we get there. I'll see you next time. Like, comment, and subscribe, people.